Today's daf we're going to be learning is Gittin daf samachet. We're going to start at the very bottom of the previous daf. We were in the middle of a story or a conversation. We had Rav Chisda who explained Shmuel as saying that someone who's a minor, who understands, right, certain things, that if he understands that it's time to return an item, that I can return something in an hour, doesn't really make a difference. They're no different from a person who can distinguish between a nut and a walnut and a rock or a pebble, and therefore they can only accept things for themselves. They can't pass it on to somebody else. And then we said, Rav Gittin Avardan said, how could that be? Because when we had a whole thing about lishtatef b'mavoy, to be part of this eruv in an alley, what did we say? That a shifcha, you can be mizaket to all the other people through an amai v'riyah, okay, a maidservant. Now, the maidservant can only be underage. So how could she possibly pass on to others? To which she answered, oh, that's the Rabbanit. And then Vardan, Rav Chisda said, had nothing to respond. But he really did have something to respond. And the Gemara says he could have said, what do you mean? Anything that the rabbis institute, called the tikkun Rabbanan, now going to the top of our daf, when the rabbis instituted things like shitufei miva'on, even though it's a rabbinic institution, it was done just like the doraita laws. So it means that even when you're doing something on a rabbinic level, you still have to have it through the criteria of Torah, which means a minor can't be mizakeh to somebody else. So basically, if this woman is able to, and she's a minor, it must be Shmuel's wrong. So what do they answer? What's the response? What's Shmuel or Rav Chisda going to answer back? When we say that principle, it's only b'milta like karmana Torah. It's only something that has a basis in the Torah. But shitufei has no basis in the Torah at all. There's rabbinic laws that are based on Torah, but there's also rabbinic laws that are not based on any sort of Torah law whatsoever. And that's the category that this falls into. So basically, this is not relevant, this answer. Mativ Rav Av. Rav Avya now brings another question. Marimin amaser sheni. There's a way to avoid an extra payment on a maser sheni. What's maser sheni? It's the tithe that I'm supposed to bring my own food to Jerusalem, and I usually redeem it on a coin and bring the coin to Jerusalem. But when I redeem my own fruits, I have to redeem it with adding an extra fifth. I have to add extra money. But if someone else redeems my fruits, I don't have to add any extra money. So how can I avoid this? What's like a legal loophole? He says to his children who are older already, or to his Jewish servant, male or female, here, take this money as a gift, and then redeem my maser sheni with this money. So again, how's she doing this? Because what she's really doing is doing the redemption for him. So how could she do that if she can't do a kinyan, an acquiring for somebody else? So what's the case? Again, if she already has 2 hairs, sign of maturity, well, what's she doing there? She can't be an amad v'riyah for him anymore. It must be, and what do you see? She can be mizakeh to others. So there you see, she's zochel achirin, which means that Shmuel, or Rav Chisda's understanding of Shmuel, must be wrong. Because he said, right, there's no difference, and until you become of age, you can't pass on ownership to somebody else. So what do they answer? Again, they're going to say it's rabbinic. Nowadays, Maser Sheni is only rabbinic because there's no more Jubilee year. There's no Jubilee year. There's no Maser on a Torah level. So it drops it down to rabbinic, and then we're back to saying, rabbinic law, you can be zochal achirin by rabbinic law if you're underage. But when it comes to Torah law, we only allow it if you're of age. So then they answer, wait, you can't possibly say it's Maser Sheni B'zman Hazeh when there's no Jubilee year the Mishnah is talking about, because, right, there was a Mishnah. I didn't tell you, but it was a Mishnah Maser Sheni. V'amai v'riyah B'zman Hazeh mi'ika. There's no amot ivriyot anymore, meaning, right, once there's no Jubilee, we're going to see right now, Chatanya ein eved ivri noheg ela b'zman shayovel noheg. Only when there's Yovel, the Jubilee year, there's amot ivriyot and eved ivri. There is no eved ivri or ma ivriyah when there's no Jubilee year. So you can't possibly say it's Maser Sheni on a rabbinic level because there's no more Jubilee year anymore. Well, then there would be no Amad V'Riyah, and the whole mission doesn't make any sense. So they come up with another possible way of saying it's Maser Sheni Dirabanan on a rabbinic level. Ela b'atzitz she'eino nakuv dirabanan. In atzitz, a plant that doesn't have a hole in it and it's not attached to the ground, that means it doesn't get any nutrients from the ground. You have to bring Maser, but only on a rabbinic level. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a case where there's pidyon of this Maser Sheni, which is only rabbinic in nature. So you don't have to say it's all Maser nowadays, and we're talking about a time nowadays. We could even be talking about before the Jubilee year when there were Amodi V'Riyot, Jewish maidservants, but it would have to be a particular case where the Maser Sheni was only rabbinic in nature because it was in a plant, for example. Amarav. So if we're already talking about different ages of children, now Rabba says, Shalosh midot b'katan. There's 3 different ages for minors. Tzrol v'zorko egos v'notzlo, which we already said. If he distinguishes between a stone and throws it and a walnut and keeps it, zochel la'atzmo ve'en zochel la'acherim, so he can acquire things for himself but not for others. Uchenegdam b'ktana mitkadesha l'miyun. At this age, a ktana, if her father was no longer alive or not in the picture, the mother and brother can betroth her, and it will be valid on a rabbinic level, and she can get out of it through miyun. This is something we've learned in other situations, where she can say, I don't want to be in this marriage anymore. She doesn't need to get or anything else. Younger than that, she's not even old enough to do miyun, and the marriage is really the betrothal, if the brother or mother does it, is not even anything. But at this point, at this age, where we say that she understands the difference between a walnut and a pebble, then already she can be married on a rabbinic level, and she can also get out of it by doing miyun. Hapiutot, which is around ages 6 to 8, they can buy and sell things if they're movables, not land, but movables. If she's a minor, remember, a woman, a young girl, can't get divorced because she doesn't understand the concept of being sent out of the house. But if she's already this age, 6 to 8, she already understands that concept. And therefore, if her father betroths her, she can get divorced with a get. And right, in other words, the point here is that if her mother or brother betroth her, she doesn't need a get. This age, she actually can, and then she can even be at a younger age because she can already be married. She can already leave the marriage because all she has to do is miyun, which doesn't require so much knowledge. But in order to get a get and to understand the concept of being kicked out of his house or not being allowed to come back, really, that she needs to be in an older age, 6 to 8. Higiulo, not nidarim, when they're already within a year of bar mitzvah age. Nidrehem neder, their vows are valid. Hekideshan hekdesh, if they sanctify something to the temple, it's valid. Uchinegdam biktana choletzet. And if she's a minor, if she's a woman, she can also do chalitza at that age. She's old enough to do chalitza. Really, you need ish. Because you need ish, you also need isha. But they say isha, once she's within that year for bat mitzvah, she's already considered in that range. But one thing you really can't do for an older age, and that's the korban nechsei aviv. When it comes to an orphan who inherited property from the father, he can't sell the property of his father until ad shei ben esrim. You have to be 20 to be able to sell the property you inherited. They don't trust you before that age that you understand the significance of it. And you won't necessarily make the right decision. So that is really at already an age of 20. New Mishnah. So now we finished, just to summarize this section, because we're going to have a lot of different parts today. So I'm going to summarize them as we finish each Mishnah. We finished with the issue of Rav Chinin of Arda'an arguing with Rav Chisda, who explained Shmuel as saying there's a difference in the age of a child between when, right, that at a younger age, they can accept things, acquire them for themselves, but not for others until they become of age. And then we had all the questions, and we tried, right, specifically with the Jewish maidservant, and each one of them we answered by saying it was only D'Rabbanan, and that's a whole different story. Then Rava brought these different ages of what children can do under the age of 12, at what stage they're relevant for what issues, that they're already of age in order to do that. Now we're moving on to another Mishnah. Ktana she'amra hitkabel li Gittin. We're still on the issue of a ktana, although we're going to quickly move on. We have a minor who says, accept my get on my behalf. So a minor can't make someone into a shaliach, a messenger. So eino get ad she'yagia get li'ada. It's not a get until she gets the get in hand. Because even if the shaliach brings it to her, she didn't appoint him to be a shaliach, so he can't accept the get on her behalf. And therefore the husband could always change his mind until the get gets to her. She'ein katan oseh shaliach, because a minor can't appoint a shaliach. But if the father said, her father said, go to a messenger, go accept the get on behalf of my daughter, since the father is of age who can set up a messenger, and since the daughter is really in the domain of the father, so he's allowed to do that, and therefore, as soon as the shaliach gets the get, since he's a shaliach to accept the get that the father appointed, that's actually valid. And the husband can't change his mind anymore. Haomer, new topic, but still the same Mishnah here. Haomer ten get zeli ishti b'makom ploni. If someone says, go give my wife a get in this particular place, and then nitanolo b'makom achil, the messenger didn't listen to him. Now we're going to get into a whole thing. What if messengers don't do exactly what you send them to do? Pasul, the get is no good, because clearly he wanted the get to be given her in a particular place, whether he wanted to specifically humiliate her or he wanted it to be done more secretly. We don't know, but whatever reason, he said specifically do it in this place. The messenger didn't. He didn't listen to him. He didn't do what he was sent to do. So it's disqualified. It's not a valid get. But if he says to the messenger, she's in this place, go give it to her there, and he gives it to her somewhere else, it's fine, because all he meant was trying to say that's where you'll find her. But it doesn't mean if he happened to find her somewhere else, she was on her way to go to the store and he bumped into her on the street and it wasn't where they wanted to be, or she was in the nearby town looking for something or whatever it is, he finds her, of course he can give it to her. The husband wasn't particular about where he wanted it to be given. He was just saying where you're likely to find her. Now we're going to see about a woman. Is it the same or not? So if a woman says, accept my get, she makes a shaliach lekabbalah to accept her get, and she says, accept it in this place. And he accepts it somewhere else. Pasul. Some people explain that she's embarrassed. She doesn't want to get it in any particular place. She wants it specifically maybe in some place where there's nobody there. And therefore, if he takes it somewhere else, disqualified. Just like with the man. But Rabbi Elazar machshir. Rabbi Elazar disagrees. It says, no. It's a good get. Okay, and we'll see in the Gemara why this is. And notice he only says it by the woman, not by the man. Haveli iti b'makom ploni. What if she says, bring my get from this place? Vehevi olami makom acher, and he brings it from a different place, kashir. That everybody agrees is fine, because she's just saying, where will you likely find the get? Go get the get from there and bring it to me. Okay, so that's something else. Rabbi Elazar, why does Rabbi Elazar only disagree about the woman and not about the man? Well, since he's the one who it's his intent that is important in the get, because remember, her intent is irrelevant. Because of that, he's obviously careful about where he wants this to happen. He's the one who's calling the shots. She can get divorced against her will. It really doesn't matter what her intent is here and where she wants the get to be done. And therefore we assume she's just showing him. Rabbi Elazar just assumes that when she says, go accept my get in this place, she's just trying to tell him where he's going to find it. And she's not really saying, I want it specifically to be done there, because her whole intent doesn't really matter in general in the get. And therefore, it doesn't really make a difference to her where the get is given, or even if it does make a difference, she's not the main player. New Mishnah. Okay, so that was, again, we had two issues in this Mishnah. One was a Tana cannot appoint a shaliach, but a father can appoint a shaliach to accept the get on behalf of his daughter, or his minor daughter. And then we had the issue of the woman and the man who specifically tell the shaliach to do the halacha or the kabbalah in the place where they specifically want. And then with the woman, it was a bit of a debate, but we distinguish between when it seems clear they want it to be in that place versus when it seems clear they're just saying, this is where you'll likely find him or her. Okay, and then we have Rabbi Elazar, who thinks the woman's intent isn't really important either which way, and therefore she's probably just, whatever language she uses, she's just designating where you'd find the husband. New Mishnah. Now we're talking about a woman gets to eat truma until what time? Until, right, if she's married to a kohen, until they're divorced. But what if she appoints a shaliach to accept the get? Then as soon as the shaliach accepts the get, she can't eat truma. But she doesn't know exactly when the shaliach is going to accept the get. And therefore, haveli giti, she says, go bring me my get, where she's only going to be divorced when she gets the get. That's obvious. She eats truma until the get gets to her. Hitkabeli giti, she says, accept the get on my behalf. Then she immediately can't eat truma because it could be he walked out the door, found the husband, and got the get, and she's divorced. Hitkabeli giti, and this is going to connect with the previous Mishnah, b'makom loni. If she says, go accept this get on my behalf in this location, and now it's going to be a little tricky what this means. She eats truma until the get arrives in that place. Okay, we'll see that the Gemara is going to assume that what it means is she said to the shaliach, go to get the get and then bring the get to this location. So when the get gets to that location, or when the time kind of factor, how much time it'll take the messenger to get the get from the husband and bring it to that place, then she can't eat truma. Rabbi Eliezer, or we're going to see later, it's really Rabbi Elazar, osel miyad. Okay, this is Rabbi Elazar speaking, even though my text says Rabbi Eliezer. It should be, I don't know what your text says, but it should be Rabbi Elazar, osel miyad. He forbids it immediately. Even if you said when the get gets to that place, you're still forbidden immediately. So we'll see why. This connects with what Rabbi Elazar said in the previous mission. But first we're going to look at the rabbi's opinion. So now they're going to question the Gemara, Begita miyahave. Now it says, if she says, and then he goes and gets the get from the husband and then brings it to this place, it sounds like she'll be divorced at that point, right? But Hamar Resha lo habigita. But that understanding of our Mishnah would imply that she said, go accept it in that place. He went somewhere else and just brought it to that place. Well, that's not what she said. And according to Tanakama, that shouldn't be valid because she said specifically, get it in this place. And he actually got it somewhere else and brought the get to that place. So they explain, no, it means the amrele hitkabeli giti b'mata machasya. They're now going to explain the Mishnah like this. It's where she said, for example, get me my get in mata machasya, which he did. And then zimnin de mishkacha sorry, I misexplained. She says, accept my get in mata machasya, but zimnin de mishkacha le'bebavel. But you might find it in Bavel. Bavel here seems to be a place in Babylonia, not Bavel, the whole Babylonia. Kind of like New York, right? New York City is in New York, so there must have been a place called Bavel. So you might find it in Bavel. What she really was saying to him was the following. Wherever you find it from my husband, just take it from him. Turning now to Amubet. But my get's only going to be valid when you get to mata machasya. Okay, why should we do this? It's a good question, but we're not going to really try to go there and figure this out. But what they're saying is this must be a case, since it says when the get gets there and not when the person accepts the get, it must be that she told him, make sure though the get eventually arrives in this city. And then when it gets there, that's when she'll be divorced. And then I guess the point is you have to kind of calculate how long it will take to get there, and that would be when she would stop eating truma. Rabbi Elazar ser miyat. Now they say pshita. It's the same as the previous Mishnah. Why do you even need to tell us this? Because we said anyway, the woman says, go bring my get there. She's just saying that's where you'll probably find him. But if he walks out the door and the husband's there, he'll get the get right away. And that's fine because that's really included in what the woman said. And therefore, of course, you should forbid it immediately. So why does Rabbi Elazar have to come in this Mishnah and say that? Now, you could just simply say the Mishnah is telling you something that's obvious, but it is. But the Gemara likes to say there must be something new here. It's for a case where she says, go to the east, because my husband's on the east side of town. And he walks out the door and he goes to the west. Now, she's pretty convinced her husband's in the east. But what does she know where he is really? So you might say, look, in the west, he's not there. So I could still eat truma. But it could be that as soon as he walks out, he might bump into the husband and the husband will give him the get. So you have to be concerned even in that case. And therefore, the woman has to stop eating truma immediately. And that maybe was a little less obvious. Now we're going to bring a similar case, but not having to do with get, with eruv. Okay, we're back to eruv. We started there. We're going to continue there now. He wants to make an eruv. This could be maybe even an eruv truma, whatever it is. Maybe it's not a truma, but whatever it is, eruv is done with food, whether it's an eruv truma, an eruv chatzerot. If it's a bunch of our courtyard we want to carry in our courtyard, we put an eruv. So someone says to his messenger, "Go make an eruv for me with dates." But he didn't listen to me, and he took my figs. I told him to do it with figs, and he did it with dates. In one braita, it says eruv o eruv. It says this is valid. In a different place, it says ein eruv o eruv. The eruv is not a valid eruv. So Amar Rabba lo kash. Rabba says, "Oh, don't worry, this is not difficult." And now we're going to see why we brought this up, because ha-Rabbanan, ha-Rabbi Elazar. This is exactly the debate Rabbi Elazar and Tanakama in our Mishnah. Ha-Rabbanan da'amrik peda. The rabbi said she really meant what she said when she said this place. Likewise here, I really meant when I said dates, I wanted dates and not figs. And the shaliach didn't do what I said. Rabbi Elazar, the one that says eruv is an eruv, he was just saying take figs because he knew he had some figs around, but if he found dates, of course he could take dates. That's Rabba's understanding of the two braita that seem to contradict each other. Rav Yosef Amar, so they're not contradictory, they're just different opinions. Rav Yosef Amar Hava Rabbanan. Rav Yosef says they're both the rabbis. Kan b'shelo, kan b'shel chavero. One is his, and one is someone else's food. Okay, what does this mean? If I tell you, go make an eruv with my figs, and you take my dates, I don't really care. It doesn't matter whether you use my figs or you use my dates. But if I asked a friend and I said, listen, I need some food to borrow for my eruv, can I borrow your dates? And he says, sure. And then I send you as my messenger to go get the dates and you go get figs. Well, he didn't tell me I could use his figs. He told me I could use his dates. So that's a problem. That's not doing what I asked. And that's a big problem because I'm going to get in trouble. He's going to say, why'd you take my figs and not my dates? So that's the difference. So you could explain this all. And by the way, I forgot to mention this. He says it's all the rabbis. Really, I meant what I, okay, so the rabbis say by get, when she says, go give me the get in that place, I really meant what I said. But here, the rabbis wouldn't necessarily say that. A get, like I said before, maybe it's a humiliation for her to get it in that place. Here, what's the difference? Dates or figs, I don't really care. But if it's someone else's stuff, then I care. And that's why ein eruv o eruv, because you took someone else's stuff and the wrong thing. Amar le Abaye. So Abaye says, I don't agree with your distinction because there's another case where there's the same distinction and you can't answer what you just answered here. Let's see. If you say to your messenger, make an eruv for me in a tower, and instead he did it in a dovecote. You said do it in a dovecote, and he did it in the tower. Now here it sounds like it's the location. Now, Titanya Chada, eruv o eruv, Titanya Idachin, eruv o eruv. You have the exact same distinction in the Braita. One said it works, and one said it doesn't work. Now, try to plug in what you just said. You can't say, put it in my, right, one is put it in my dovecote, and he put it in the tower instead, and that works. And the other one is, I said, put it in my tower, my friend's tower, and instead you put it in the friend's dovecote. That wouldn't be relevant. So that makes no sense. Because the eruv would be in my property if it was my eruv. So you can't answer that, in which case it's not a good distinction. But now we're going to answer Hatam Nami, Ika peri de Migdal, U peri de Shabbat. Maybe you misunderstood the Braita. When it said dovecote or tower, maybe it meant take my food that's in the tower. Take my food, and instead he took the food from the dovecote. And again, if it's mine, it's fine. But if I said take someone else's, I said take your food from the dovecote, and he took your food from the tower, I didn't ask you for permission to take your food from the tower. So it would be a problem. Okay. So there we resolved that issue. And again, we had two ways. Let's just review now from the beginning. We started with this Mishnah of when does a woman stop eating truma? And then we really dealt with in the Gemara about the case specifically where she said, go get my get from this place, where it sounded like they said only when he gets to that place, which sounds like he got the get from somewhere else. And how could that be, according to the rabbis? So we answered, there was a bit of a weird case where she said, go get my get wherever you find my husband, but bring it to this place, and then it'll be a get when you get to that place. And that's why it's when he gets to the place that she can't eat the truma anymore. And Rabbi Elazar says immediately, why isn't that obvious? Well, it was for a unique case where he went kind of the wrong direction, and she thought maybe, right, my husband's not there, I can eat truma, but no, we have to say immediately you can't eat truma. And then we brought the case with the Eruv and tried to say maybe the debate between these two Brightot is really just reflecting different opinions of the rabbis and Rabbi Elazar in our Mishnah. But then we said maybe they don't argue about this case, and maybe they're only arguing about get. And really, the rabbis there who said we assume that she's being particular about the place wouldn't say the same thing by Eruv. And then why do we have this distinction between the two Brightot? Because one is when they take from my food where I don't really care, and one is when I ask them to take from someone else's food. There, I care which one they use, and if they do the wrong thing, it's not a valid Eruv. We tried to bring another case to say maybe that's not a good distinction, Abai said, but we can answer it and actually explain it in the same way. Okay, next Mishnah. Two more Mishnayot today. Ha'omer kitvu get utnu lishi. Now we're talking about language of get. He says, write a get and give it to my wife, or gershuha, divorce her, or chase her away, literally. Kitvu igeret utnula, write a letter and give it to her. If you tell that to a messenger, a man tells it to a messenger, we can assume he meant give her a divorce, right? And write the get and give it to her. So that's what the messengers do. But if he says patrua, okay, which is kind of get rid of her, a language that's not exactly used for get, parnisuha, you support her, like, I don't want to support her anymore. Asula kinimus, do her what's polite to do, basically means, I guess I don't want to be with her anymore. Asula karaoi, do with her what's appropriate. Okay, these are all, what he means exactly is a good question. That's really what we don't really get. But Rashi says kinimus is kechok. We don't know what chok means, either chok get or chok mazon ksud. Okay, whether it means give her a get or give her food. Okay, we don't exactly know what that means. Anyway, all these languages are clearly not languages of divorce, and where you can't be sure anyway. And therefore, lo amar klum. The people he said this to don't do anything. Tanu Rabbanit. We're going to go through more languages. They're quoted in a Braita. Shalchuha, send her away. Shivkua, leave her to be on her own. Trachua, it's also a language of divorce. So all those, you hear that, you can write the get and give it to her. Patrua, parnesua, sula kinimusa, sula karaoi, the same four mentioned in the Mishnah, lo amar klum, those don't. Tanya, another bright, Rabbi Natan Omer, patrua dvarav kayamim. Okay, the word patrua is a language of get, and in fact, in the get we saw get piturim. Okay, it is a word used for them, but pitruha with a yud and a chirik, what we call it, lo amar klum. Pitrua means lashon of patur, make her exempt, which usually means she doesn't have to pay money for something. That is not a language of a get. Amarava, so Rava now explains what's the machloket. Why do Rabbi Natan say pitrua it works? Patrua works. Pitrua doesn't mean anything. And the rabbis say pitrua, patrua, all of that doesn't mean anything. Well, Rava gives a fascinating answer. Rabbi Natan de Bavlaihu, he was from Babylonia, and in Babylonia they spoke Aramaic. And diek bein pitrua le patrua. Patrua is a word in Aramaic that means to divorce her. But pitrua is a word in Hebrew from patul. So since he lived in Babylonia and knew Aramaic, patrua for him meant divorce her. And Tana Didan, our Tana, Debar Eretz Israel, who came from Israel, lo diek, he didn't understand because he only spoke Hebrew. So to him, pitrua, patrua, it's all the same thing. He didn't realize it comes from the Aramaic and it means divorce. Or it doesn't mean that by him in the Hebrew language. So here is where you come from and what language you speak and what, the nuances are a little bit different. And that's what made the difference between them. Very interesting. The Gemara is giving a linguistic reason for, an historic or geographical reason for why there's the difference. Now they ask the following question. Hotziua, take her out, mahu. Izvuha, leave her be, mahu. Hitirua, let her be free, mahu. Hinichua, leave her alone, mahu. Ho'ilula, do for her, mahu. Asula kada, do for her according to the law, mahu. What is it? Pshat miachad, at least one of these we have an answer for. Titania, we saw in the bright. Asula kadat, asula kanimus, asula karaoi lo amar klum. Asula kadat doesn't work. So we see that from the bright. At least we have an answer to one of them, but the others we don't really know. New Mishnah. So that was all languages. This goes back to Masechet Nidarim and all those times where we've talked about how we don't, when somebody says something, the question is, what do they mean with what they say. And that's going to continue our topic in the next Mishnah, which is the Mishnah we've already seen in our Masechet at least once, I think even twice, maybe just once. I see it's on Daf Yud Gimel. In the beginning, they used to say, someone who's about to get executed. And he says, write a get to my wife. But he didn't say write and give the get to my wife. Normally, if someone says write a get, they write the get. They don't give it. He didn't say give the get. He said write it. Sounds like he's getting ready to give it. But he didn't say give it. But if he says write the get and he's about to be executed, he was just all worked up about being executed and just wasn't thinking clearly and really clearly meant write it and give it to her, because why? We assume also he wanted to give it to her so she doesn't have to undergo chalitza. Probably didn't have kids, and he wants her to be divorced and not to be a widow that she'll have to do chalitza. So that was in the beginning. But afterwards they said not only this person, but even someone who's leaving on a trip, going in a caravan, since there was danger, he probably wanted to divorce his wife before so she doesn't get stuck as a naguna who doesn't know if her husband's alive or not. Or possibly also chalitza-ish. Rabbi Shimon Shizui Yomer, Afa Misukan. He also says someone's about to die, same thing. The assumption is that we assume these people are worked up, stressed, busy, just forgot to say the word shnu, but they obviously meant to write and give the get because they know they're going away or they're going to die or something like that, and they wouldn't have left something open like that, okay? And we have reason to believe that they were just focused on other things and not really paying attention and kind of forgot to say that. We're going to just start the story now. The Gemara starts with the story about Geneva, who we've seen already before, controversial character, yes, Talmid Chacham, but a little bit feisty. Well, he was Yotzei B'Kol Arhava. He ends up getting executed by the authorities, right, the Gentile authorities. Kiava Kanafik, when he went out and he was going to be executed, he said, Amar, Havu Arba Mea Zuze LeRabbi Avina Mechamer Denahar Panya. Take 400 zuz worth of wine that I have in Nahar Panya, and we're going to see what happened after this in tomorrow's daf. With that, we will finish. So review of the end part was just this idea about some people who don't say kitvu, sometimes we could say they actually meant kitvu utshnu, and it kind of underwent some changes. First, it was just someone who was getting executed, and then they extended the halacha to a bunch of other situations as well that they thought were similar to that. With that, wishing everybody a great day.